We finally made it to Jak 3. We've survived time travel, 2 years of brutal experiments, and Tony Hawk's Pro Dystopia 4. After all this, it's time to finally crack into Jak 3 and figure out if the end of this trilogy really holds up in the modern age. We've saved Haven City, and by extension, the whole world. Our heroes earned their rest, but now it's time to dive headfirst into a new epic adventure to save our loving public.
You are hereby banished to the wasteland for life.
Wait, who the hell is this guy? Our introduction begins before we actually even get to the title screen this time. This 8-minute long cutscene effectively tells us that peace in Haven City lasted all of about 4 seconds before killer robots and metalheads swarmed back en masse to ruin the party. Worst of all is this guy, head of Haven City's HOA and just a real prick all around. Since we weren't controlling things, the war was not going well and everything got a little blown up. Vigor and the city council decided Jak is to blame for all this, and so we get banished along with Daxter and also Pecker for some reason. The Wastelanders, who had actually been hinted at in Jak 2, find us and take us in to prove ourselves in an arena fight to make sure we're actually useful, launching us into the tutorial. The tutorial this time is short, sweet, and to the point. Jump, punch, grab some orbs, and we're good to go. The controls are again pretty solid. I can't tell if they've made any actual changes between Jak 2 and now. They might have just actually copy-pasted the old code, but it works well and I've got no complaints. And hey, they actually include the option to invert the camera in the regular pause menu this time, instead of sticking it behind some hidden code like it's a big secret no one should know about. Finishing off the movement tutorial, Damus gives us our first gun because we can't go 30 seconds without shooting something, and we are thrust into the arena fight for our combat tutorial. Guns this time are way crazier than Jak 2. The same 4 guns from before do exist and operate the same, however, each category now gets a total of 3 sub-options, giving us a grand total of 12 guns to choose from, and they're thrown at us with a decently high frequency. Each gun does something unique, and some are definitely more useful than others. These range from a charged ring of red bubbles to tickle the feet of everyone around, all the way to a handheld tactical warhead capable of wiping out all life on the planet 6 times over. My personal favorite is the Ricochet Blaster, mainly because I can't hit the broadside of a barn on a clear sunny day. Jak hulks out at the end and we get a bit of Dark Jak gameplay, which is largely the same, though we do start with some of the powers that were available through Unlock in Jak 2. Small village of people successfully decimated, and we're now 1/3 of the way to being accepted by these maniacs. I'll take the request of this meaty monster man to talk about navigation. We've got a few new options to get around this time, those being leaper lizards, which vibrate my controller way too much, and some actual wheeled cars for the first time in the franchise. The cars are pretty much exclusive to the desert and really feel like I'm driving around on sand, which, while great for immersion, drives me absolutely insane. They're fast, and turning just a bit too hard for a microsecond too long sends them into a wild spin I just couldn't get used to. We do have a few options for what to drive though, from a dune buggy that's impossible to control to a jumpy man that's a little less impossible to control. I'll get more into the rest of navigation later, but overall the vibe is way better and I crashed into fewer walls than before. We show up some angry monks by blowing up their new toy and get a dark ego crystal for our efforts. Keep that in mind because we will be getting a couple more of these as we go on. The monks hate us because of course they do, and some big purple star is getting closer every day, which is likely very bad and will cause problems, so let's take our mind off things with some quick racing. Just like old times. After going out again to get some old artifacts at the request of Damus, we get our first piece of Mars armor. This is another new feature of Jak 3. At certain moments throughout the game, we will collect the pieces of Mars armor, which will increase our total health pool. These are completely linked to the story, so don't worry about missing anything here.
If you race my monks on their leapers.
Really? Another race already? This first section of the game is really front-loaded with races, driving, and arena fights, and it feels a little rushed. I think we're meant to assume that weeks or even months have gone by since we got here, but in reality, it's been all of about an hour, and going from dying in the desert to champion of the lizard races feels like I'm being force-fed drama for the sake of gameplay gimmicks. Anyway, we shoot some dinosaurs and get another eco crystal. The last dinosaur spits out a communicator with a familiar face, shouting about getting as many of these crystals as possible. Arena fight number 2 down, and we head off to gather some baby lizards with the blood of the masses weighing heavy on our shoulders. The lizard wrangling is fun, but they do have a tendency to trip and die over every misplaced grain of sand, small cactus, and wall that definitely wasn't just smacked into because I realized I needed more footage. We now head over to this ancient ruin because Jack read the script and knows there's something to do here. This something happens to be climbing to the top and hang gliding into a nearby volcano because that's what sane people do, and also to find some monks, I guess. Daxter gameplay is back in force in Jak 3, at least in a few spots. It's mostly just short platforming sections that open up a path and is some quick, inoffensive fun to break up all the senseless violence. It also proves that Daxter is canonically as strong as Jak, which is a nice bit of information to know. Pry the weird totem from the cold, dead hands of this monk, and Jak can now turn invisible, a neat little ability that is criminally underused.
You know what I really miss? Soft underpants. You know how it lifts and cradles?
Yeah, I guess it is odd that no one ever got him some clothes. Skipping ahead a bit past some spiders and acrobatics through more ruins, we get our first taste of Light Jak. Light Jak is a fun but underutilized addition to Jak 3 in my opinion. His focus is more on utility than combat, and while he does have some fun abilities, I never found much use for them outside of the set areas designed around it. Stopping time is fun though.
Told me this could be done. Now make it so.
Seriously, why is anyone taking this man as a threat? He looks like the uncle you don't invite to family dinner anymore. Skipping ahead a bit, this time past some Sunday traffic and railgun target practice, it's time to finally become a legal citizen of Spargus.
Sig? Jack? Daxter?
Sig!
Sig makes a grand entrance and doesn't kill us, which is just a huge bro moment for everyone. It's also revealed that he's been a spy this whole time, working for Spargus to keep an eye on things in Haven. Damus is mad we didn't kill each other, so now we have to go wipe out the Flood from Halo in a nearby cave to make up for it. Ashlyn lets us know that shit still sucks in Haven, and Jack is getting all butthurt over being thrown out, really hammering home that he's
Through saving the world.
So now let's go save the world. We zoom through a deep underground tunnel, a precursor gives us the revolutionary ability to block as a reward, and Vigor shows up. Somehow he's convinced that a man with that hairline is going to be the one to save the day. Regardless, he gives us our first boss fight. Bosses, in my opinion, have received a bit of a downgrade from Jak 2. They're still more complicated, and each has unique challenges to overcome, but there's a much larger focus on gimmicks this time around. This brass Gundam, for example, can only take damage by climbing up onto these pillars and shooting a cart full of TNT down into it. Until that phase starts, it's all just waiting around until the pillars pop back up. It's cool looking, don't get me wrong, but waiting around for the boss to start the phase where you can hurt it isn't really fun, engaging gameplay. Anyway, we blow the robot up, and guess what? Haven City is still a mess. I get a fun little bug here where this metalhead is running around in the cutscene while Samos tells us how bad things are. He of course can't just let this light wall down for a second so we can pass through, so we'll have to take the long way around. Also, the catacombs are super important, like really critical we get down there. Not yet though, first we have to blow up more walking tanks. Turns out that the big robot leader is Errol, who exploded so hard last time he lost an L from his name. Somehow he got robocopped into a psychopath that wants to kill everything, so it's good to see that people really can change after all. Daxter hops on a big missile to open up more of the city, which leads to an endless battle between man and machine that will rage on for all eternity, but hey, things always get worse before they get better, right?
Daxter! You're back! Oh, did that mean old desert burn your itty-bitty paws?
We really are in the worst timeline, aren't we? A little bit of sewer exploration later, and we pop out in my favorite sector of Jak 3's Haven City, the Metalhead Zone. This whole area is warped into something alien. Everything from the walls covered in organic matter to the pillars crackling with energy feels sickly alive and out to get you. I love this whole zone, and I wish we could have seen more of this. Seeing how the Metalheads transform the world into something grotesque is incredible. Anyway, we kill some plants in a callback to the first game, and then use Daxter's obnoxious bar sign to lure away a missile so we can steal some eco from the robots. I'm skipping over a lot of the Haven City missions right now because they're mostly irrelevant to the story. Most of them feel unnecessary at best and outright padding at worst, but there isn't any one particular mission I can say was objectively bad. Navigation in Haven is drastically improved. Turns out large-scale war really cuts down traffic, so I found myself way less less irritated every time I had to go from one end of the city to another. I can't say with confidence whether or not Haven is actually smaller end to end now. Certain areas are completely missing, of course, but the areas that do exist feel much easier to navigate, and it results in much less time spent going from place to place between missions. Back to the desert for a quick scavenger hunt and some backstory about Damus's tragic past. We wipe out yet another village of people who at this point I'm pretty sure are just acting in self-defense, and the monks are starting to warm up to us, so that's nice. We came back to the desert, hunting for some artifacts to activate some precursor ruins in the forest, and now we've got all we needed, so bye-bye desert, and hello again, war-torn hellscape. Play some Skate 3 to activate the precursor ruins, and now we can look through the world's most expensive telescope. Turns out the big purple star is actually a spaceship coming down to end all life on the planet, meaning that Mass Effect is actually just a ripoff of Jak 3, and well, this is really dumb. I don't think it's spoiling anything to say that these Dark Makers are the new cataclysmic event for Jak 3, and I really dislike this plot development. It's just way too out there. I've heard the argument that Gall and Maya should have returned as the antagonists for Jak 3, which isn't my favorite idea, but it still would have been better than a big spiky space evil bearing down on us. In my opinion, both Veigar and the Dark Makers should have been scrapped entirely. Errol should have been the only antagonist, controlling both the robots and metalheads in a big vengeance plot against Jak. He didn't need to be a psychopath bent on destroying everything, but he very easily could blame Jak for his current state and thus lose his mind trying to take him down. I think that makes a lot more sense than what we're given here. Oh well, what's next? Disbanding the HOA? Well, it's about time. Who cares if my grass isn't 2.139 inches long? I've got a planet to save. Our next goal is to take out the flying fortress making death bots, and to do so we need to get the Cypher to break in. Quick trudge through the sewers because of course we need to go through the sewers again, and now we're back in Vin's lab. Ah, Vin, it's such a shame you died off screen.
I'm a multi-layered hyperlinking digimemic bioconstruct superclocked mega memory construct, baby.
Does anyone ever stay dead in this world? So Daxter gets sucked into a computer to play some Pac-Man and returns with the physical Cypher. I'm not even going to begin to try and wrap my head around that making sense, so we'll just move on. We take a cruiser up to really do a number on this flying citadel before heading inside to mess things up in there too. At the end, we take a car for some reason and use that to break down the gates blocking our path to the Errol fight. This Errol fight is really weak. He talks a big game for someone who never actually comes down to fight us himself. Every single attack can be avoided with little to no trouble, and after a pitiful display, Errol runs away because he'll definitely get us next time. Oh, and he's been talking to the Dark Makers who promised to give him ultimate power, so I'm sure they'll definitely uphold their end of that deal, no worries at all. The whole city is completely infested now with both robots and metalheads, so it really feels like the war effort is going great. They definitely have a handle on things over here, so we head back to the desert for another traipse through an ancient ruin. The monks are having some trouble, namely, some demons from space are beating them into submission to take away all the shiny artifacts they can find. Quick pit stop to grab the power of flight, well, sort of flight, it's more like desperately flailing, and we get the shiniest artifact from Monk Supreme because they've realized we actually aren't that bad after all. I'm glad the Angry Monk plotline wrapped up just in time for the end of the world. Back to Spargus again now, because we really just can't catch a break. It's time to hop on Chekhov's railgun for a shooting match between us and some of the least threatening apocalypse robots I've ever come across. Nothing will ever go wrong in the desert again, so now we're headed back to Haven. I wonder if Jak ever gets jet lagged from all this back and forth. It's a good thing he doesn't get motion sick. Back to the forest to kill some more plants, and this time a little herbicide isn't gonna cut it. Only one thing can kill demon plants from outer space, yet another turret section. Side note, screw this guy in particular. This guy killed me more than anything else in this game, and I'm still salty about it. The telescope from before mind melds us to an off-brand Titan suit inside the Dark Maker ship so we can cause some damage. This version of the Titan suit functions exactly the same in Jak 2, and only appears in this mission. My opinion on it is also largely unchanged. The mission starts off fine, but the wonky hitboxes and clunky controls make this an unenjoyable experience overall. Moving on. Daxter has a whole meta freakout over not being sent on a mission only for us to be sent on it anyway, and it's just a rail shooter. Shoot all the bad guys to make sure Torn makes it to the end so we can blow a hole into the metalhead nest. Last time it took the strongest gun ever made to do that, but now a few pounds of C4 can take this thing down. With the door blasted down, we are now free to launch an assault on the metalhead nest. Despite having a weaker door, this nest is much larger than the last one, probably something to do with the space monsters, but I can't be bothered to find out if that's true, so I'll just assume I'm right and move on. Show some blue monsters how it feels to be on the receiving end of a grenade, and now we get to have a nice chat with Errol again. We could just stop him now, but his arm got all red and glowy, and it was really scary, so instead we'll let him jump through this portal and get away. Sig shows up because he knows we need someone to lean on right now, and we head back into town. Oh, I forgot to mention, but Onin is still alive despite her getting on in years, and she lets us know that it's probably a good idea for us to head down into the catacombs now. Definitely couldn't have gone this way a few hours ago. It simply would have been far too difficult for us to manage without the wisdom we now hold. We press a button to summon the Wastelanders, and, like me when my Amazon package isn't already here before I pressed place order, Daxter gets really mad when they don't show up in 2 seconds flat. He knows there's a whole desert to get across, right? The final mission is a bit of a combo deal. We start with a combat and platforming gauntlet, much like the end of Jak 2, but with more wall destruction. The enemies are plentiful, but at no point did I ever feel like I was completely overwhelmed, and I always had plenty of ways to get myself out of a sticky situation. Despite being a literal monster and taking on way more enemies than this a few moments prior, Jak and Daxter both immediately resign themselves to death the moment 4 goofy satellites show up to ruin the party. Fortunately, Damus shows up in record time to give us our driving section. The driving section is fine overall, but this car is slow to control. It's nothing worth losing your mind over, but it could definitely have used a bit more fine-tuning. Smash our heads against enough things and we can put this section behind us. Good job, everyone. Now this dynamic trio can finish this fight. At least tell me Damus is alright.
They need you.
Damn, we just can't catch a break. Also, in a giant middle finger to the continuity of this franchise, Jak is Damus's son. This is a killer blow, but can be made sense of. What really throws me for a loop is the reveal that Jak is actually Mar. The Mar that built Haven and is essentially a demigod is actually this guy from both the past and present day at the same time. So somehow, Jak was born in the future, was sent back by himself to the past to live with the farmers, only to go back to the future to save himself and send himself back to the past, but then also went to a different part of the past to live as Mar and build Haven City. Does this make sense? No? Are we going to talk about it? No? Alright, fair enough. Let's instead listen to Vigor be the most insufferable person to ever live and chase him through the catacombs. Hey, do you want yet another crazy reveal that really breaks the continuity of this franchise?
If you knew we precursors were a bunch of little fuzzy rats, would you worship us?
So yeah, the little orange rats are the all-powerful precursors. Never mind the egg we found last game that literally hatched into an incorporeal blue entity. It's the rats. Also, Vigor is a rat now. It's better than he deserves. The rats turn on the planetary defenses, and we have to get on the Darkmaker ship and stop Errol before it gets blown up for some reason. Listen, all this has gone way off the rails at this point, so let's just get this over with. Jump, jump, shoot, fly, there's Errol. Jak tackles him off the ship, which immediately fails, but Jak can also fly, so it doesn't matter. The ship gets blown up, Errol escapes in a big stupid spider tank, and we have to escape while it falls apart at a leisurely pace around us. We can't let Errol get away with driving something this dumb looking, so we hop in a car to pursue. The final boss is broken into 2 parts. First, we have to drive around and shoot the big glowy bits on its feet. The lack of any ability to manually aim makes this a pain in the ass, but it could be worse. Once that's done, the top falls off and we have to scale it to go really finish this fight. The final fight is just fine. I spent a lot of time thinking I had to hit the big glowy part here with the dark bomb, but turns out you can just shoot it for the same damage. This is overall not a challenging fight, but the spectacle of it is nice. I could have done without the wind though. So Errol blows up and we've won. Big celebration, and everyone we don't like is dead yet again. The precursors try to take Jak away to go do the Mar stuff, but he instead sticks around because he knows there's a racing game coming up. So the timeline will forever be shattered so Jak X combat racing can happen. So Jak 3. Is it a good game? Well, it's crazy. The story is perfectly fine up until a hard left turn into a flaming house, and the gameplay is largely unchanged from the last game. If you liked Jak 2, then yeah, you'll like Jak 3. Would I recommend it to someone who's never played it? Yeah, but maybe assign a quick plot synopsis on Jak 2 as homework first. As always, let me know what you thought in the comments, and let me know if there's anything I missed, because I most certainly missed at least something. I do have some plans for some titles to cover next. I'll be taking a break from Jak for a while after this, but if you have anything you'd like to see me cover, let me know.